Well, welcome back to the Knack II main menu.
Shiroi,
Look how beautiful
I
that
am so
scenery is.
amazed.
Shiroi. The Sonic Mania menu has nothing on this. The Crash Bandicoot menu got nothing on this. I'm sure that Spiral menu would be a piece of crap compared to this beautiful animation.
Jova, it's dead. It's already dead, Jova.
It won't be dead, Pedro, because we all know Sony's gonna make Knack 3, baby.
If anything, I wouldn't mind just for the sake of completion. I mean...
What, you mean the whole Power
at
3?
At the same time, though, I wouldn't want to Japan Studio to still be relegated to this third of a franchise.
What are you talking about, Tio? Clearly going off of that interview, they are totally invested in this franchise and not just desperate for a paycheck.
I mean, I guess the new collaboration we're having with From Software on that VR game is a step up.
Oh,
it's
a VR game?
Yeah, it's a VR game. Remember, Jova, it was at the end of the Sony conference.
Oh, right, yeah.
It boggles my mind that this franchise, believe it or not, because I've actually followed the NeoGAF thread for this for a while when it leaked. It boggles my mind that this franchise actually does have its fans. Like, I mean, even
Lightning Returns has its fans.
Let me put
not just that, sure, I'll even go a step further, Shiroi. Fairy Fencer F has its fans. However, I can still despite that game being infinitely more terrible than this one, I'll still understand why Fairy Fencer F has its fans, because despite being an atrocious piece of garbage that needs to be destroyed and burned for all eternity, it does have an identity for itself. It's a complete garbage identity.
I'm sorry.
Fuck you, game.
I'm sorry, what were the characters just saying about Knack being amazing, Pedro, as he was crushed by a water barrel?
Ava was literally clapping and as I got killed.
I think that's a good representation of a franchise in general.
Yes. You know, I think the best way to describe it is like, well, Fairy Fencer F, while being a worse game, it's still at higher highs than Knack 2.
No, it's not that.
That's not the thing, Jova and Pedro.
It has a personality at the very least.
These are two types of bad on different side of the spectrum. Knack 2's bad qualities are ranging from a standpoint of a simply badly written plot, okay, and other things that tied around it, like a boring gameplay, or some characters that are just very bad looking, especially in this sequel. Fairy Fencer have problems sprouts instead of a very mean-spirited plot and mean-spirited written character doing very mean-spirited things like pedophilia.
To be fair, now to be fair, you can actually have a mean-spirited world and actually have it be entertaining. Look at stuff like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Like the demon path in the Soul Nomad, I can get that, but I don't know, like Fairy Fencer F is especially not good in handling that.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's a different type of bad compared to Knack and Knack 2. These two games in particular, Knack and Knack 2, are bad for their own reasons, in a sense that the real argument will be in this case, what game do you think it's closer to a potential to be an actual good game if provided the necessary changes? Personally, I would say...
Oh wait, I love this part.
Okay, yeah, Jones, I guess.
There you go,
Yeah.
that's what that thing is for.
It's not really a strike because they're not lined up by pins, and you know what? Whatever. I don't care.
But no, between the two, I would still say Fairy Fencer F is still more salvageable potential.
Yeah.
Because in that case, you just simply need to give the characters a decent personality or just writing even better. With Knack, you have to go pretty much everything. The graphic engine, the combat in re-scrambling the upgrade system, making sure that it's not as mandatory but actual upgrades to your existing moves. The story in itself, lore building, everything. Fairy Fencer F at least had the advantage of having a relatively small wording how to contain things. So even if it has the whole copy-pasted dungeons, if you basically how do you teleport it? How? If you circumvent enough and you manage to remove the materials that pisses people off, there is the actual potential for a good game. With Knack and Knack II, that required way too much effort for such a thing. Keep in mind, Victor in the first game is probably one of the worst villains I've ever seen in a video game.
And yet they managed to outdo his stupidity in this game with...
I don't know, the villain in this game is more straightforward.
Well, I wasn't talking about the villain, I was talking about just the writing actually manages to be more stupid than Victor was.
Just so I can finish though, because what I was talking about is not so much which one was salvageable or whatever.
Yeah,
what I was talking about
the
is...
fans.
Well, I was talking about like the fact that Fairfencer has fans doesn't surprise me because I am aware of the otaku weebu culture. So
that and as for the gameplay,
not to mention Fairfencer, for as terrible as it is, it's memorable because it does have it does have an identity. Oh, hold on, I'll explain this.
Is it a new special?
Basically, you have learned a new super move. Which is crystal. Basically, a new move that happens when that crystal shows up and I go Super Saiyan.
Oh, Mr. Duarte, I have a question.
Go ahead.
If we establish that Ava can give Knack all these special abilities, why just for this one superpower does he actually need to go to a super ancient relic to get that ability out of nowhere?
Quiet, or I'll give you an F.
It's like a battery.
But that's literally a problem, though. It's like, well, okay, we established that Ava's supposed to be the one giving Knack these superpowers.
For some reason.
And they never established a limit.
There you go.
Now, the swords are actually pretty cool for the first few minutes.
And they give you long range, basically, for your attacks in hard mode. Special, sorry.
Kinda makes you wonder why Knack couldn't have done something similar in the first game, but, you know, this is about correcting the mistakes of the past.
No, we're only gonna put a bandage on them.
Yeah, but honestly, Shiro, I think you just summed up the perfect metaphor. This is applying a simple bandage to a tumor. That's pretty much it.
Anyway, Pedro, you were saying?
At least for Fairfencer, for as terrible as it is, it does... Oh god damn it, game, stop interrupting me.
Cutscenes.
Be amazed.
That's right, this is the High Goblin City, which...
I am not amazed in the slightest.
Again, let me remind you, Shiroi, the main difference between goblins and high goblins was that high goblins were able to make machines on their own. That's pretty much it.
Oh great! Oh great! More boring platforming. Anyway, here's the Fairfencer does have an identity and personality to itself. It's a god-awful one that needs to be eradicated and destroyed, but it is one. This game, on the other hand, this game is so completely devoid of character or identity. It's so bland and uninspired in literally every aspect. The gameplay is bland and uninspired. The plot and characters are bland and uninspired.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing in this game that is memorable or that stands out. This game has no pulse. And as a result, I cannot understand me. How can someone actually stand up for this? Because there's literally... What is even there to defend here?
Yeah, like...
It's...
Fairfencer at the very least has one enjoyable character for the most part.
And a gameplay that you can rely on to if you want to skip all the cutscenes.
I mean, essentially, Fairfencer Ref has the gameplay from a series much more like Neptunia. So, yeah, I mean, the gameplay is at least
I guess the one argument you can make is that some people would rather have a boring game that's inoffensive rather than a game that's technically not boring, but it's completely offensive.
Doesn't explain fans of this game. In fact, you know, it's funny you mention that because, okay, with a lot of games that we played and hated...
people, Jova, like, for example, take my situation. I'm a person who grew up with...
Guys, button mashing for the win!
Oh yeah, the swords, sir!
Look how good I am at Knack II.
I don't think it's that tough is that big of a problem.
I'm just gonna wait until the game introduces an enemy that negates the use of the swords.
Yes, it should have been developed just a bit instead of just being square. But the thought process behind it it's similar again to God of War, and that game is chock-full. I should probably steal.
I think I see what Pedro means though, because okay, you want to do a game where you feel like you're pressing one button. That looked like you were just using the PlayStation's camera, but that was actually part of the cutscene.
Got it.
Again, the combat is just as...
Pedro, question about this game and Knack 1, I guess. This actually uses that blue light thing behind the PS4 controller. Because so far, the only game that I see it using in some capacity is Until Dawn. we'd ask you to press your fingers on it in order to stay put.
Detroit Become Human. You know how the lights of the LEDs of the androids change its color from blue to yellow to red?
Yeah, no, that it changes. I know. I noticed that also in Yakuza 0. What I mean is integrating it in some sort of gameplay mechanic.
Oh, not that I'm aware.
Again, Until Dawn has these weird moments where your character needs to stay still when an enemy is approaching nearby, and he literally asks you to stay put and to press that thing, even though I don't even think it's a button. So I don't know what Supermassive Games was speaking with that. But anyway,
they were trying to be Kojima-esque about it, you know, kind of like the Psycho Mantis moment.
I'll elaborate more when we'll get to that game, considering not permanent anymore to this.
Okay, can I take a time to talk about how the landscapes in this game really just frustrate me with how dull they are?
Boring.
Like,
yeah.
Well, okay.
This just looks like a generic PS2 platformer.
Let's
just
do
in
the
HD.
obvious comparison. The Crash Bandicoot seems to be what's supposed to be once again the PS4's Crash Bandicoot.
And you know what? Let's not even compare it to the PS4 version. Let's compare it to the PlayStation 1 version.
Yeah. The PS1 version has make you traverse to like a shitload of different locations, which are recognizable for their lustrous colors. You start with the jungle environment, which is very those greens, the browns, the oranges, and everything. You travel up to rivers, which basically when you get the blue. Then as you progress, you get the caves or the temples, where you get more soft palette colors and everything like that. And then starts integrating machinery, so black, gray, white, a bit of brown, and everything like that.
Let's not also forget, Tio, the temples, the ruins, the bridges, the caves.
Yeah, so there is variety. Knack has some of the color, but it doesn't know how to use it properly and to amalgamate them better. This very brownish desert locale is just inspiring.
And you know what's sad? It's like, well, the way Knack has to traverse through these ways, they're, okay, let's call them the PlayStation 4 equivalent to how narrow Crash's levels back in the PlayStation era were.
Let me give a positive where it was needed. For example, again, like I mentioned in the first game when we got to it, the first thing you do in the first game, the tutorial level, I honestly think it's the best spot on in that regard, in a sense, but also with the color thing. You get basically this sterile testing room, which is completely light blue, cyanic, and the contrast with Knack's colors and what it does actually is very effective in that regard. It has a more pleasant vibe to it in that sense. And then you get some jungle environment. But for example, now here, everything just looks dull. Even for the scenario in the island before, when you had to raise the statue and then fought the zombie robots, it just wasn't telling me anything.
And I think I can explain why. It's like, okay, you could argue there's variety to the avenues and places Knack has to go through. Here's the problem, though. There's not much detail done. Think about it like this. It's like if somebody's writing a fanfic, and while they focus on what the characters are doing in the actions or whatnot, they don't focus much on the environments. Like, say, oh, then they went to an Egyptian area, and that's it. They went to an Egyptian area. I mean, sure, there's a ship out here, but again, there's not much to it.
Crash 3 does that kind of thing with the time travel, but it's not big of a deal because, like, once again, the environments are colorful, and you see what Cortex and the villains are doing in that time period with their changes, like Cortex image on a Sphinx, for example.
Not only that, the Crash Bandicoot PlayStation trilogy had so much detail put into the background of levels, which was amazing. Like, that was on the PlayStation. Like, in the PlayStation, you had stuff going on in the background. You had dragons, dinosaurs, or whatnot here. Like,
I think the problem with this is combined with the lack of lore establishment for the setting.
You know what else?
Because if I cared more about the environment, about the locals that I was traversing, you know, on a story and lore perspective, I think I would probably be more willing to, you know, close an eye on kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how bad foundations lead us to notice all the more problems. Like, and you know what? I'm gonna say right now, Crash Bandicoot 1 tells a better story than Knack, simply through its gameplay. Like, a very good example is on the final island when you're making your way up to Pinstripe. You start in, of course, the more junglish areas, but then you work up your way to the more fierce areas, eventually going inside the machinery
The start
levels.
of it, Jova, is Cortex Power, basically. That's the starting point. Then you get Generator Room, which is
Spooky.
very indicative of
Very.
what's going on. Then you get Road to Nowhere, which is
Oh,
the
wait,
base
wait,
level.
wait, hold on. Actually, to Road to Nowhere comes after the Pinstripe boss, I don't know. What comes after Generator Room is one of my favorite levels. That is
Toxic Waste.
Toxic Waste, which has that iconic rock soundtrack, and you're literally going up against Italian gangsters. Like, seriously.
And not just that, so it's right at the end of Generator Room as well. They for some reason, they changed the name. It's like Pinstripelli Potrotti or something like that.
Exactly. It's like...
But it's like what Jova said, even with subtle changes, you get to recognize this level and actually enjoy them, even if it may get frustrating on a gameplay wise, because Crash 1 is very crushing difficulty. So there's that.
Here we go.
Oh, right. We're actually about to do something different. Like, okay, I'm not asking for a game to
Or
constantly
GDs.
change up the mix or whatnot.
Cinematic action.
Yeah, here's another issue with the game here, Shiroi. Notice how for a lot of times we're doing literally the same things, like you grow, you shrink, you press the square button. Like, not much changes.
No,
Once
the gameplay is
again,
incredibly repetitive.
Once again, the QTs are not indicative of what's going on, nor are integrated fairly well.
And I know what you're thinking, folks, but Jova, don't in a lot of games you technically do a lot of the same things? Like, again, with Crash Bandicoot, aren't you mainly just going forth and jumping? Well,
fail.
oh god. Wait, so did you actually fail, or is that just how the cutscene's supposed to go?
No, that's just how it goes, Joe.
That's just how it goes.
It's hard to tell. Oh wait, you know what? Silly me expecting for this game to have that level of variation, and that somehow
This
worked.
sticks the landing.
Even if you fail the QTE, I never failed the QTE in this game because the QTEs are incredibly simplistic anyway. But
And this is the excuse. Oh,
Also,
actually,
I'm
no.
sorry, was that cogwheel made of rubber? That looked a bit too bouncy.
I'm pretty sure if you fail the QTE, it will just go back to the last checkpoint anyway.
Anyway.
Oh, goody, we have a gear puzzle.
Oh, joy. So, Pedro, how good a gear puzzle do we have here?
How many
No,
P cards would it be worth?
Chapter 4-2, Within the Walls.
Does this really require another chapter?
Yes.
Remember, Jova, this is chapters within chapters.
You know, game, just because you say that we're in a different chapter doesn't mean you're going anywhere.
One
Like,
move into place.
Thank you, Knack.
Yeah, thank for that out of nowhere, seriously.
So, going back to what I was
Call us again when you want to have a personality.
Yeah, so going back to what I was saying, like, yeah, you may say, oh, you're technically doing the same thing in a lot of platformers. No, like, okay, let's look at, again, the Crash Bandicoot series. Yeah, you're doing a lot of platforming, but in some levels, Crash has different avenues and whatnot. And okay, I'm not going to include the vehicle levels because that's cheating, but even in the platforming levels, the way you actually have to do your jumps changes, especially in Crash Bandicoot 1. You may go for the long running jump or the short jump, or this or that, and especially the jumps where you have to time them off of the bouncy blocks. Basically, yes, the controls in Crash Bandicoot are limited, but what you do with the environments is not. Well, in the sense that there's a lot more you can do, and such you have to maneuver such. Whereas compared to a game like Knack, where, again, the enemies themselves don't even really change except for certain story segments or whatnot. And again, it seems like you can get away with doing this until the game provides you with a more tougher, quote-unquote, scenario here and there. Heck, even in the Sonic games back in the 8-bit and 16-bit eras, the term hold right and win, that's a lie, because no, you gotta platform all heck is
The
good.
only one that I've seen, again, Jova, based on Johnny's review, is I think Sonic Chaos.
Well, that's Sonic
or how
Chaos.
simple it is. Well, Jova, keep in mind, I'm the ignorant of the group when it comes to Sonic.
Nah, it's okay, I don't blame you. I mean, Sonic Chaos is one of the more obscure ones, but yeah, again, that goes to my point, is like, well, you do this, you do that. Sure, there may be the puzzles every now and then, but Pedro is the one who's playing this game. How much would you say the puzzles actually mix stuff up?
The puzzles are boring. Even when they're technically... even when they're even when I technically have to think to solve them, they're never really fun because they're so bland and uninspired. It's the typical block pushing puzzles that you typically see in games of this nature, and it's just so boring.
Like, if you're gonna have puzzles like this, maybe add something to make them more fun.
Yeah, like, okay, let me give you an example, which we also see in the first God of War. You get a block pushing puzzle, but here's how it works. In order to proceed to the next room, you first proceed normally, there's a ramp, you then go into this next room, which is blocked, and there's a statue with some weird contraptions. You push the levers to see how it works. One of them moves a couple of contraptions, the other activates them, revealing that are flamethrowers, but they do nothing. So what to do? A note tells that the noblest of heroes always has to do some sacrifices. Then you remember that in the previous room, back on the previous room, there are a shit ton of cages with undead enemies inside. Well, depending on the region you live in, the American one it has normal people, but the point is, there are cages with enemies inside. So what Kratos in his charming personality is gonna do? He goes back to the previous room and you need to push the block all up the ramp into the other room in order to activate both the flamethrower and position them so that the
Oh,
beacon
look at
gets
that,
burst.
guys. That's 2 gears. See?
Thanks,
Lovely.
The only major obstacle that you get doing pushing the blocks is that enemies sometimes spawn right next to you, so you need to let go of the block in a secure position so it doesn't fall outside the ramp. It's simple in concept and it's not a focus because God of War games had never been too much about puzzle solving. They are present and some of them can be pretty clever in the late games, like 3 and Ascension. But they're not the major focus. The major focus is the combat. But I will say, a puzzle like that is infinitely more charming and memorable than the things you do in this game. Like, for example, this one. It has the idea of a gear puzzle where you need to move them in place. And I'm okay with that. But at the same time, it's not really memorable, if I have to be honest. Especially because Knack is not just pushing the blocks in some particular manner, he's basically traversing the entire level.
Fuck the gears, we'll just jump over them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the double jump, so it makes sense. But basically, the entire level is based around getting the gears. So it becomes long and excruciating, and all these menial, trivial tasks have been.
It's the fact that it's literally just that, and there's nothing visually pleasing or interesting.
I mean, the puzzle in itself works on its own, it's just not stimulating for the player.
Like, maybe if it were a game centered around this, they could have done something like Prince of Persia, which, does puzzle solving mixed with
I come to
platforming.
think of it, Sands of Time, the Forgotten Sands actually has a puzzle similar to this.
I mean, yeah. And no, just because Prince of Persia is centered around it doesn't mean Knack couldn't have done something similar. Like, hey,
why couldn't I just jump downward to that? Why do I have to take that detour? Seriously, I was trying to jump downward to the lever. It wouldn't let me because of an invisible wall. I just have to go for that small little detour. It's such
Alright, second time's the charm.
So
so
Shiroi,
unnecessary.
as the newest comer. But yeah, going back to our talk about fans, it's set. Oh, what? So now you three can't warp mystically?
Lucas, we bust our asses for this, come on.
I mean, okay, folks, I wouldn't make so much a big deal about it, but as you've noticed, they have teleported in cases where they clearly shouldn't make it, so the fact that we had to waste our time doing a puzzle...
That's simple as that.
I think it hurts, though, it's the fact that we had to waste our time doing a puzzle to help them to cross when they've been crossing inexplicably before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, going back to the talk about fans, what's sad, honestly? It's like, well, normally I would think maybe we should have someone to guest commentate that we know that likes this game. Here's the thing, though. Unlike, say, the likes of Barry Fencer F or even, Final Fantasy XIII, even Lightning Returns, I don't think we know a single person personally who likes this game. I mean, sure, we've seen some, but we don't know any.
Well, that's the thing, Teo. In order to find out a Trek fan, I have to scour the internet because they're rare.
You eventually found someone. I've yet to see someone who legitimately likes positively completely Knack.
I can. Yeah.
You can't. There are people out there that do, and I can easily. There's a lot of people on NeoGAF that do actually. Surprisingly,
Well,
that's the thing.
Well, no
Why
shot.
does-
That's
Honestly,
NeoGAF.
Jova, honestly, Pedro, actually, that doesn't surprise me, considering NeoGAF's track record.
NeoGAF.
That's still better than the track. Literally, for as much as I can try, like I find sometimes I can find like a random game facts thread that has like a guy asking, "How come there's no sequel? I really enjoyed this game."
See, the thing with Dr. Trek isn't always just so much as quality. Don't get me wrong, the quality could have been
It's
better.
more of the
It's
obscurity and
obscure.
everything. Knack is just the.
Oh!
See, there you go. How they fucking teleported?
You know, again, a game's got to be really special to get us to pay this much attention to background aspects like that.
Did we? I forgot if we mentioned already. Might as well try to daily reminder. This was sold $60 at launch.
Oh yeah.
Actually, no,
Well-
$40 too.
Oh
40.
right, 40. Yeah, but
Well,
well,
honestly, it's still too much. It should have been 30 at
here's the
least.
thing, Tio. Some people got it for free.
Yeah, like Pedro, like
And-
thanks to that bug.
Honestly, though,
Yeah, that completely casual bug, totally not organized.
I mean, here's the sad thing, though. I'd argue it's not even worth 30
I got a
bucks.
trophy.
You know,
Big hitter.
I'm gonna say this right now. I don't think it's even worth 30 bucks for the sake like, well, it's big, empty bouts. Like, heck,
If you're really, if I'm gonna repeat this for the final thought most likely, but if you're really morbidly curious, get it for a sale, and that's literally.
let me put it like this: Sonic Forces, Sonic Forces has some emptiness to it, but at least with Sonic Forces, there's a lot more you can do, and there actually are secrets and shortcuts and whatnot, and there's more enemies to them except for that one level, and I guess we could argue it's because it's a pinball level, but that doesn't really excuse it. My point being is like, well, Sonic Forces, which got sold at proper price, you know, like I think it was also $39.99. That
40 bucks. Well, originally it was supposed to be a AAA launch, but we changed it along the line, probably because we knew that it would have been too much.
Sonic Forces has issues, but that definitely feels like a game more worth 40 bucks than this. Like, again,
I would say this.
This
yeah.
is
I'll
so
disagree.
What about this not being worth 40 bucks?
That too, but I don't think Sonic Forces is either, honestly. To me, Sonic Forces is worth 20 bucks.
Eh, fair enough. Anyway, though, oh goody, do we have another puzzle?
I mean, that game, I can finish that game in like 2 hours. This game lasts more than that, at
Pedro,
least.
what is with the stupid camera shift here all of a sudden?
Don't ask me.
I think you were supposed to wait until the end of the dialogue.
That's just the thing, too. I don't know. I'm
Oh,
trying.
remember, this is your blind round, so obviously you're not. You don't
There you go, too.
I mean, look at that. Next.
Apparently that was how I was supposed to do things. There you go.
Check out the
No
lights.
comment.
Do you think anyone's down there?
It's been
Let's-
200 years. If there is something down there, let's hope it's on our
Alright.
side.
Gee, guys,
That's
this
such
goblin
a
this high goblin
lie.
temple that's been inactive for 200 years. I hope that the people here are totally on our side.
Not quite what we're
Totally.
searching for.
All right,
Alright,
what are we
everybody.
searching for here? I almost forgot. because the story is like
we're
that.
searching.
Cra-
Remember, we're searching for
Tracy of
Yorrik's
the
facility.
old- Yeah.
Right,
Yorrik.
Yorik's facility.
Yorrik's facility, so we can try to find something that can possibly explain these robots suddenly becoming sentient. So, will we find the answers, everybody? Tune in next time to find out.
See
Yeah.
you then.